All right, so enough about mitigation. Let's talk about response. This is for those of us who are adrenaline junkies. This kicks in immediately after the disastrous event has occurred. The first people that respond are the victims themselves. This is self-rescue, those who rescue themselves and their neighbors. People helping people in the disaster itself. And then there's the local volunteer and government agencies. So fire, emergency medical services, and law enforcement are then next to respond. This is an ever-expanding circle of response. We have the individual who's actually a victim of the disaster being the first to respond and taking care of themselves, doing self-rescue and helping to rescue the people around them. And then we have the county level response, fire departments, local law enforcement, local EMS. If we get a bigger or big enough disaster, then we have a state level response, at least here in the United States. We have the state police, National Guard, state workers, state infrastructure and supplies, and heavy machinery and such that the state can bring to bear. Beyond that, we have the federal response. That kicks in the National Guard, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, disaster medical assistant teams, disaster mortuary teams, veterinary teams that all come in to respond to the disaster. There are strategic stockpiles of food, water, pharmaceuticals, and more that can be brought into an area. And then we have a worldwide or global level response with non-governmental agencies and friendly government aid. A good example of this is the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. People helped each other initially, providing care and aid for each other. And this continued through the response with people help digging out other people. You know, the government of Haiti kicked in and helped as much as it could. And then there was the worldwide response that governments and countries all over the world sent aid and teams to help out with the response and aid the people. And then the non-governmental agencies also established clinics, shelters, provided medical aid, food, water, shelter, and such for the people. At this recording in 2013, some of these non-governmental agencies are still there providing aid. And I'm sure some friendly governments are still providing aid for the victims of that disaster. So response slowly morphs into recovery. The danger to life, limb, and property slowly begins to pass. We used to think that we needed to be prepared for at least 3 days from the disaster event to this slow return of services from outside. What we've recently learned is that this outside aid now usually takes at least a week in the United States to return. In other countries, it could be even longer. So this week is considered a reasonable amount of time frame in the United States for a return of power, return of water, utilities, normal medical care, and other services. So we need to prepare ourselves from this response through this recovery period to take care of ourselves for somewhere between 3 days to at least a week without any kind of outside aid. We need to be able to take care of all of our personal needs and all of the needs of our family during that time. So again, response slowly morphs into that recovery phase, which is returning to normal. What is normal? Is it the life that we led prior to the disaster? Or is it a new normal, changed from how we used to live? This process can take years. Hurricane Katrina, struck New Orleans years ago, and in some parts of the city, they are still going through recovery. The earthquake in Haiti was in 2010, and my guess would be that there are still some aspects of the country and the city of Port-au-Prince that are still going to be recovering when the next disaster occurs. There's so many concerns that we have to deal with. Long-term housing and such. FEMA will provide finances for a hotel room for a week or so after a disaster, but it may take significantly longer for your house to get back to livable conditions. And then what do you do for the homeless folks that are in the shelters? As we begin to close down the shelters, where do the homeless folks go? Services such as utilities, medical services. When do the stores open? When do the restaurants reopen? These are things that will take a long time. And the question is, do they even reopen? Simple things like garbage pickup are going to be disrupted and only slowly come back to normalcy. There is financial aid and other help from the government and aid from agencies like the Red Cross and its sister agencies in other countries. But this slowly begins to close down, and people will still need to be recovering. People will still need to get their shelter, their food, their water back to a level where it used to be. Businesses, when will they reopen? For businesses to reopen, they need to have people to go in and buy things. It is essential to have businesses open so that people can go in and buy those life essentials. So which comes first, the people or the businesses? Recovery then is a very, very slow process, meeting these physical needs. And we have other needs that go beyond these. We have the psychological needs, the process of cleaning up and rebuilding, and the disaster itself carries a heavy, heavy toll on people. So we need psychological help to decompress after all of this and that we've gone through, and recover from the disaster itself. So recovery is a long, difficult process that may take years and years and years. So in the recovery process, we begin to ask some questions. What is the new normal? Can we or should we rebuild the houses that have been destroyed by the disaster? $1-million homes along the Gulf Coast in the United States destroyed during disasters, should they be rebuilt? They're going to be at risk for the next disaster. Areas that are at risk for high water, poor neighborhoods, rich neighborhoods, it really doesn't matter. Should they be rebuilt? And who pays for that rebuilding? Can we actually rebuild them? What protections can be offered to the people from a security standpoint? Who's going to pay for the rebuilding? When you know disasters occur over and over and over again, should we rebuild these houses and these businesses? The next time a disaster occurs, or the disaster after that, all of this creates a tremendous financial toll. And then how can we improve our plans to mitigate the effects of the next event? What can we do? What can we learn from this that's going to improve our response the next time and prepare us better for that next disaster so that the disaster has less of a destructive effect? So answering these questions brings us full circle to mitigation again. We begin this process all over again, maybe a little wiser, maybe not. You know, during Hurricane Katrina and in its immediate aftermath, during the response, we talked about better plans for evacuating folks from dangerous areas. This was a real problem with Katrina. We learned quickly, and when Hurricane Rita struck soon afterwards, we were able to evacuate people quickly and get them out of harm's way. But the questions still remain. Do we force people to evacuate? So we've changed our plans. We've changed our protocols. But what limitations do we have financially and in regards to personal freedom that still limit what we can require, what we can do, what we're going to do, and what plans and protocols are going to be? So these are hard questions that need to be dealt with, and brings us to the end of the disaster cycle. This brings us to the end of this particular presentation dealing with the disaster cycle, which again is mitigation, response, recovery, and mitigation. This provides the basis for looking at and examining disasters and how we prepare for them and how we're going to respond and deal with them. What we're going to do in subsequent presentations is talk in a little bit more detail about preparedness on an individual basis. We're going to talk a little bit about institutional preparedness, state and federal level preparedness. Then we're going to move away from preparedness and talk about some other disaster basics.